Welcome to Modern Anarchy, the podcast exploring sex, relationships, and liberation. I'm your host, Dr. Nicole.
I tried to keep her quiet, but she's screaming inside of me. I tried to keep her hiding, oh, shut up. I tried to keep her quiet, but she's a wild, wild woman.
On today's episode, we have Dean Spade. Join us for a conversation about radical community building. Together we talk about dismantling the romance myth, NRE safety planning, and curiosity over campaigning. Hello, dear listener, and welcome back to Modern Anarchy. I'm so delighted to have all of you tuning in to another episode each Wednesday. My name is Dr. Nicole. I'm a sex and relationship psychotherapist providing psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, author of the Psychedelic Jealousy Guide and the first research study on relationship anarchy, and founder of The Pleasure Practice, where I teach students from around the world how to craft pleasurable sex lives and non-monogamous relationships. Dear listener, Dean Spade, I mean, come on, what an episode. Oh, I'm so excited to share this one with you, dear listener, because, this podcast has been happening for the last 5 years, and out of all of the episodes, over 250 episodes that have been created on this show, the most played episode of all time is Dean Spade. So I'm so excited to have him on the show for round 2. You are going to love this episode. We get into, the raw humanness of what it means to try to build that other world that we know is possible, a world where our communities are stronger and interconnected and able to dismantle many of these internalized systems that are so deep within our unconscious and the ways that we relate and the ways that we go through conflict. And Dean is just such a source of wisdom and knowledge. If you haven't read his book, that is the title of this episode, Love in a Fucked Up World, I highly recommend. I know many of you have probably already read this book. Many of my clients have already read this book. And so I am so delighted to be bringing you this episode with Dean, and so much gratitude for Dean for coming onto the show today. So enjoy. All right, dear listener, if you are ready to liberate your pleasure, you can explore my offerings and all of my free resources at modernanarchypodcast.com. That is also where you will find out about my upcoming pleasure liberation, non-monogamy. This is a 16-week program where I bring truly everything I've ever learned as a psychotherapist, all of my research on non-monogamy, and bring it into a educational space where you learn with students from around the world the psychological paradigms, the attachment theory, the somatic work to be able to build pleasurable non-monogamous relationships, right? And so if you want to learn more about that and join me with some students from around the world, you can go straight into the show notes below and you will find all of those resources and links, including links to Dean's work as well. And with that, dear listener, please know that I'm sending you all my love, and let's tune in to today's episode. Dear listener, there's a space already waiting for you where you are invited to let go of every old script about sex and relationships and begin living a life rooted in your pleasure, empowerment, and deep alignment. I'm Dr. Nicole, and this is your invitation to the Pleasure Liberation Groups, a transformative, educational, and deeply immersive experience designed for visionary individuals like you. Together, we'll gather in community to explore desire, expand relational wisdom, and embody the lives we're here to lead. Each session is woven with practices, teachings, and the kind of connection that makes real transformation possible. And I'll be right there with you, guiding the process with an embodied curriculum that supports both personal and collective liberation. This is your invitation into the next chapter of your erotic evolution. Say yes to your pleasure and visit modernanarchypodcast.com/pleasure practice to apply. And the first question that I love to ask every guest on the show is, how would you introduce yourself to the listeners?
Hmm. Great question. Different every day. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
Dean. I have my life is about the question of like what makes transformative change happen. And I've been in social movement spaces for almost 30 years doing work around like abolition and queer and trans liberation and poverty and borders and wars. And my work has been a combination of like recognizing the limits of trying to work within legal systems or trying to get legal recognition, a lot of stuff around that, and a lot of stuff kind of redirecting and saying that like the real work we need to do is like community-based work to fight back locally and support and care for people in crisis. And more my work has turned towards like supporting people to actually build groups that can where people can do that together and build like interpersonal skills around working together with each other in groups, which inevitably involves conflict.
Yep.
And then also like figuring out the really complex thing of like, why don't my actions align with my values? And what does it feel like to want to change that and actually change that instead of just like labeling each other when we all inevitably are contradictory in that way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I write books and have a podcast called Love in a Fucked Up World that's just been around for like less than a year. And spend a lot of time like doing workshops with groups that are struggling with this stuff.
Amazing. Well, it's such a joy to have you again on the podcast today, Dean. Thank you for coming back.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me back.
Yeah. It's really exciting too. I've been doing the podcast when this will come out for 5 years now,
Wow.
right? So the most played episode I have is this guided masturbation I made. Very exciting, right? We love that's where all the people are at. And then
Cool. I want to
beyond
listen.
that, yeah, totally, totally. It's good, right? Walk you through some somatic work, a guided mental work with that. We need that sometimes. And not in a, some of them I found when I was doing my research were a little like extra on the erotic rather than or like a pushy erotic. Do you know what I mean? Like a extra sexual space. I wanted something that was just really about embodiment and feeling
Hmm.
that. Um, and so beyond that episode, I've had so many guests on the show. And out of all of those episodes, you are the most played.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's
Lots of
exciting.
overlapping interests,
Uh-huh, uh-huh, exactly. So the people are excited to have you back here.
Cool.
And your book, I'd love to talk about the romance myth and the sticky caramel that is. I love the metaphor that you referenced there in terms of how delicious and sweet it can be, but also when it's hot, how much it can actually burn you. And so I'm curious if we could start there as a jumping off point.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, in the book, Love in a Fucked Up World is a book that's about trying to have people in our radical communities do some shared pattern identification about like things that just seem to happen over and over again. I wrote it because I feel like most people kind of act their worst when it comes to those relationships. Like a
Yeah,
lot of people be like, this person's so amazing, they're so wonderful in our community, except for they treat their date really weird or people that they want to date or used to date.
right.
And so many groups fall apart over it, and so many of us experience, bad things in our lives from this area of life, and also just act so different from our other
Yeah.
values. And so one part of that is this like identifying the romance myth, which is like this big illusion that is cultivated by like every pop song and TV show and book and
Yeah.
everything your parents say and by the legal system itself that says that your life should revolve around a romantic relationship, that this is what will make you happy, that if you don't have it, you can't be happy and you're alone, that other relationships don't matter as much and you should like ditch your friends or ditch your politics or ditch your dreams for this kind of relationship. And also it creates like all this intense resentment because then people, of course, do not find that one person meets their every needs
Right.
and reads their mind. And so
Yeah.
people are in these very stagnated, often like very sexless, very cruel dynamics with one another, or very deadening, numbing dynamics in these, and it's kind of a perfect thing for racial capitalism to have us all like suffering this sort of stagnation in our intimate lives and stifled and not doing things we really want to do, and then also keeping others from doing what they really want to do, like finding everything our lover wants to do threatening to us.
Hmm.
If they want to have new kinds of friends or pursue new kinds of artistic projects or go to school for something or live somewhere else or drop out of certain rat races or whatever, or have a vibrant sexuality or whatever. So this myth is like just like, responsible for so much unhappiness and for so many like kind of uncritical expectations. And it's like, wow, that happens to people all the time. You'll know someone who's like got like very developed feminist and queer politics. And then they fall in love. And suddenly they're like, I don't know, I just want a white dress. Or I just think
Yeah.
if I had a baby with this person, I would be happy. Or and it's like, to me, romance is like mystification. It's like
Mm.
I've lost track of the obvious signs of reality that I could have observed in others. And I now, in Buddhism, people talk about like, I now believe this thing will make me permanently happy. And in reality, nothing will make you permanently happy and nothing is permanent, et cetera. So it's like, what's going on with the things we've been told will make us permanently happy? And I think this applies to home ownership, it applies to parenting, it applies
Yeah.
to wealth, and it applies to marriage or romance. And so I've just seen this do a lot of damage to people's lives and communities. And I think there's nothing wrong with how exciting and sweet and sticky romance is and how fun it is to get high off of new relationship energy and how like I mean I'm like really into sex. Like all these things are
Hmm.
really fun and wonderful. But how could I have like like a safety plan, like an awareness of how much people throw their lives off the rails for this? What kinds of commitments could I make to staying connected with my friends and community, my values? What do I want to do to avoid becoming isolated in a relationship that then might become violent or at least just like, make me unhappy because I'm isolated?
Hmm.
How can I figure out when I'm having a strong feelings because, you didn't call me back or you
Yeah.
started dating someone else or whatever it is? How can I figure out what's values aligned to action? And so that I don't, break into your phone or tell everybody in the community that you should be kicked out of the group or, yell at you a lot or whatever things people do to each other under the influence of those really strong feelings of betrayal and disappointment that kind of go with that cycle of romance. In the book, I also talk about how the cycle of romance, the kind of the thing where like when I first meet you, like I can see no wrong in you, and I also show you my best side, and we're like so
Yeah.
goo-goo-eyed over each other, and then like inevitably I will experience disappointment, and it might be proportional to like how much I
Yes.
was like kind of projecting that you would meet all my needs and heal all my oldest wounds unconsciously, and then I might be like so mad at you,
Yeah.
like that cycle happens very obviously with lovers, but it also happens with friends and it happens with groups.
Right.
And so
Hmm.
another thing I'm really trying to think about in the book is like, let's say you're new to organizing and you've just joined your first, organizing group and you're like for the first time in your life doing something you care about to stop wars or to stop ICE or whatever it is we're doing. And like I'm seeing you go through the whole thing. I'm watching you go through the cycle. You're like, oh my God, this group is amazing. People finally understand me. I finally have other friends like me, whatever. And could I hold your hand while you go through the other parts of the cycle? And could I like help you weather it? And like, could we like know this cycle is a pattern and then like
Yeah.
somehow care for each other so that you don't like have to destroy the entire group when you become upset because you didn't feel listened to or people were having patriarchal or racist or other dynamics, which of course are upsetting, but like it kind of, how do we support each other through these very reactive, kind of culturally scripted cycles? And that's part of what the romance stuff is about in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Such needed work for the revolution, right? How else are we going to do it other than working together? And so to go through all of this to build the skills, this is the heart of it all right here. And in terms of the romance myth, it's fascinating because it's such a state of new relationship energy that, as you're pointing to, you can experience with any sort of relationship, whether it's to a new substance, often. Whoa, this new drug. Whoa, this new person. Whoa, this new group. Wow, right? Like it's that novelty, and especially with people, we get all of that the intimacy, the purpose, the dopamine, the oxytocin, the serotonin, and it really is a state similar to cocaine. They've done a lot of research on the dopamine pathways, right? And so it's fascinating how if your friend was going through a cocaine bender, we would be saying like, hey, what's your safety plan for all these other areas of your life?
However, as you pointed, in terms of especially romance, when you go through that, that's actually like the peak of the movie. Like that drugged out intense state is the ideal part, quote unquote, right? And so we don't really have any sort of scaffolding for looking at that as potentially a dangerous thing. That's just sort of the norm of what we quote unquote want.
Yeah, everybody wants it. And it would be like, if you're asking me a question about it as my friend, are you just jealous? Or are you, people would be like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. This person I'm dating is gonna meet all me, and it can
Yeah.
even feel like escalating it, being like, oh my God, I know it's bonkers, but we're gonna move in together after 2 months, or we're gonna, like whatever, some other thing like that can feel like we can be in a cycle of trying to appease our own anxiety about this newfound
Mm.
vulnerability and this connection, and then just like escalate really fast. And that's really celebrated, right? Like, oh my
Mhm.
God, they sent me so many flowers. They introduced me to their family. They introduced me to their kid, whatever. And yeah, I think like it can be really nice to be in a friend circle where I can just be like, Nicole, I want to send this boy this song. It is such an escalation. Can I send it to you instead? Can
Yeah,
I, like,
exactly.
I want to text this. Please help me wait at least a few more weeks to decide whether or not to text
Uh-huh.
this. Or
Uh-huh.
or like, please don't let me cancel the vacation we have planned as friends so that I
Right.
can, you know what I mean? Or like, don't let me
Right.
not show up to all the things that our community usually does that I usually, you know what I mean? Just like
Yeah.
help, like, and let me trust that I can have actually a better quality connection with another person if I hold on to myself and my life.
Right.
Which doesn't mean not letting ourselves be transformed by people. Maybe I fall in love with someone and they do introduce me to a new political world or a new spiritual practice or a new creative practice, and it does change the shape of my life. That could happen with, yes, with friends, but like there's a different danger about like really losing ourselves and losing our becoming isolated. I mean, that's the thing that happens. Like I think so many people I know who are my age are taking care of elders, and
Mm.
those elders were in isolating marriages or are in them. And so it's
Mm.
like these old people who don't have any friends or community, and
Yeah.
then these younger
Yeah.
people are trying to care for them. And it's like everyone's just in such a worse position than if people had
Right.
friends. But the
Right.
marriages were part of why these people became so isolated, and no one talks about that.
Right. And that's a unique part of the experience, the specifically in marriages, romance myth, right? It's not just about the sending the flowers, sending the text, and my notes app is full of unsent texts. It's a good
You should
place.
publish that as a zine. I would
Could
read
you
that zine.
imagine?
I'm sure it's so gorgeously romantic.
I actually just got 6 years of my therapy notes back as a client. I was thinking about publishing that. I was like, well, that's actually a lot. You know what I mean? But it would be interesting. Interesting. I'm not doing
Yeah.
therapy anymore as a client. I've got lots of political feelings about that, but we should get into that. But it would be fascinating to post some of these more vulnerable pieces because so much of that is a place where when we're typing it out, we're slowing down. We can read it a couple times, reflect on it, and sit and wait. And it's working with the power of urges, right? We know that most urges will pass in about 15 minutes if you really sit with it and allow it, right, to be there and feel it fully. But those 15 minutes can feel super uncomfortable, right? Especially if we're getting into more like addiction territory. It can feel like you're going to die during those 15 minutes that you're really sitting with that. And so having community, other sorts of practices that you can do is essential. And especially within the romance myth, it's very, I talk about it as a black hole, right? And so it's not just getting close, it's often also getting close in a way that's at the cost of all of your other relationships, because this is typically in the myth, the one person that's going to do all of that. Forget all these other things that I've had on the side. This is the piece, forgetting how essential it is to have community. And I do feel like, idealistically, I know this is not always the case, but the more connections you have where you get that kind of love and intimacy and specifically physical and erotic support, you have a bit more of a baseline. I'm not going to say that you don't still fall into NRE, but it's almost like you're saturated to such a level that I do think it kind of makes it a little bit easier. I'm not saying perfect by any means of the term, but a little bit easier when compared to a society where you're so completely void of any sort of touch. There's so many people that are void of touch. And so when you get that first person who, oh, I need this in my life. I need this, versus when you have that need met, it's a little bit easier, I think, to go through the NRE cycle.
Yeah, I also think, I don't know, there's a pattern that I wonder if you see in your community that I've seen a lot where people are in a long-term relationship, they break up and they're like, I just want to have casual sex now. But then the
Mm,
first person that they connect with casually, they enter a really long-term relationship with. And it's almost like there's a space in their life that's a certain size. And sometimes it's actually also really hard because they're saying to that person, hey, we're just casual,
right,
but they're not acting casual.
right.
And then the other person, it's like I'm seeing you every day and hanging out with you a lot, but I'm telling you like it's not like we're not boyfriends or
Right,
something. You know what I mean?
right,
And
right.
then there's just such a gap between like what I'm saying I want in my relationships and what I'm able to actually pursue. Like I think a lot of this stuff is kind of compulsive, like compulsive
Mm-hmm,
escalation,
mm-hmm.
compulsive like hanging out more than you meant to,
Right.
not really being able to stand being alone, or doing something different, like relying on friends or other people in the community for different things that you used to expect to rely on a lover for, or that you did rely on a lover for, or that you were told to. I mean, I also have this thing with a lot of friends who are looking for partnership and haven't found it, and
Mm,
they're like, I don't want to be alone. And I'm
mm-hmm.
like, this is such a mythology that you are alone if you don't have a
Right,
partner. Like
right.
you have your friends, hopefully, and we can
Mm-hmm.
dig into more of those. Or you have, you know, like maybe you have a faith community, or maybe you have a organizing community. But like, can we move away from the idea that we are alone if we don't
Mm-hmm.
have that kind of partnership? Like, I feel like
Right.
that's just that's part of the romance myth lie that our lives are worthless unless we have that thing. And then also
Mm-hmm.
then you'll do anything for that thing and you'll
Right.
put up with anything. Like so there's not really like a way to be like, that didn't feel good or like have figure out what your boundaries are or what you're open to. I mean, I think the one other piece I'll say about this is people will be automatically on a like, I'm looking for a serious partner and nothing else. It's really hard to date when you're looking only for a serious partner. And you know, like I don't know. How can you tell if someone is that if you don't like hang out a bunch and see what's going on? And so it's like if I'm trying to get to the end of the story with you, and there's only one answer, then I might have had an interesting sexual connection, but we didn't end up wanting that together. Or we might have had some kind of other creative experience or some kind of interesting emotional thing happen. But if I'm only at that look end point and I'm only choosing people who say that to me, which doesn't mean that that's actually what it will be,
Right.
or that
Right.
anyone can guarantee that there is compatibility for that. So I just feel like there's a lot of like the romance myth causes us to be very like on autopilot or rigid or
Mm-hmm.
like stuck repeating behaviors that may not be getting us what we want
Right.
or not
Yeah.
even be able to ask ourselves what we want and have like
Yeah.
kind of an open like, oh, I might not know because I've been programmed really hard about what's like going to be the good life for me. And
Mm-hmm.
if that thing's not available or if I it's not treating me right. Like, how can I have a more open inquiry about what I want and how people go about getting that?
Yeah. I mean, those are really tough skills, right? And so many of us don't even have the insight or awareness to notice that we've overcommitted to something, right? It's often not till after. And then can you go through the communication after that to name those experiences that you're having? I mean, that's really challenging for a lot of folks. And particularly under these systems where you're working so much in jobs that are not about community building, not about emotional skills and those sort of capacities in communication. And so the system runs off of all of us not really having these skills. Could you imagine if we all did? We would unionize together really fast, right? And so it really runs off of so many of us never getting to a space where we can really develop that insight, right? And so I think you're hitting on such an important thing is that when we watch the Hallmark movie, when we see these sorts of examples, you just go from A to the end of the point, which is serious partner, all that sort of stuff. And when you're doing that, you have a vision and you're trying to plop this person into your vision rather than actually looking at them as a human being and how you can connect and what sort of ways you could build intimacy together. You're trying to put them all the way at the end of the storyline, which is dying together, right? Rather than actually attuning with what's in front of you. And if you did more of that attuning work, the hard part of that is actually feeling like, okay, this amount of intimacy feels like too much. Let's step a little bit wider, or actually I want more, right? And all of that, that you have to have rejection skills too, because that other person could be into that, not into that, and to go through that repeatedly, which I think is an essential point of consent in any relationship, right? Is that the ways I related to you for the first year of our dynamic might not be how I want to relate the next year, or the next day, right? All of that stuff. That is a lot of insight and skills to be able to know what's going on for me, communicate it to the other person, go through rejection, go through conflict, and still get to the other side. Oof.
Yeah. What you're saying too about the story, like in the Hallmark movie or the romance novel or kind of it's it's like the whole thing is like, can I get this boy to like me? And then once I do, like, and then maybe we have a friends and enemies to friends thing, or maybe we were with other people, or maybe we had a misunderstanding and we each thought the other one didn't like each other, whatever. And then oh boom, we find
Yeah.
out we both like each other the most. And that's
Mm.
the end of the story.
Mm.
And in reality, you've just gotten into NRE. And now you are gonna have the conflict phase where you're like, oh yeah, I actually don't like seeing movies with you, or I'd rather not go to your families for some holiday you guys celebrate, or I, you know, prefer to talk with my friends about my job because you are don't listen that well, or like whatever. All the thousands and thousands of things where like we have different times of day we like to have sex, or like whatever. And we hurt each other's feelings and
Yep.
like that it's like and as you're saying we all change all the time, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
so is this relationship, how are we constantly renegotiating the relationship as ideally we're both growing in like our interests and our like development of our lives on all fronts, and having conflict that lets us maybe deepen our intimacy skills if we're capable of that. Yeah, and it's like the romance myth is about dying. It is,
Mm. Yeah.
it's about the fact that the nation state manages people's wild feral sexuality through marriage. And marriage is a promise for forever that's supposed to map on to the nation state itself, which has this lie that it is forever. Right? In reality, like countries come and go like all the fucking time. But like the story is that like wherever you live, it's forever. And this nationalism tells you it's forever. And this is how you are conscripted into it. And it's heavy to be like, oh, reality is constantly changing.
Yeah.
Emotions are arising and passing away constantly. Attachments are changing, like desire is changing, and
Right.
we have to choose all the time again and again whether or not we want to be connected to people and how and what we want to do with them and our bodies and our living quarters and our parenting arrangements and all of the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really scary, the like total uncertainty. And people, I think, are told that if they can find this kind of relationship, they will feel a deep form of safety, and things will be unchanging. And
Mm.
that is not actually available. Like that's not a thing. Like, yes, you can experience emotional security at times for periods of, for moments with people and other kinds of emotional satisfaction, which is not more valuable than experiencing like delightful risk. And, it's all valuable,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing is forever. And
No.
it's a very like regressed state in which we're like, wanting that and believing that in particular ways. It's very, very, very hard.
Mm-hmm. 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 I mean, even just looking at the divorce rates, 50% higher, it's predicated upon socioeconomic factors and education levels. So that stat can really shift depending on where you're at. The lower SES, lower education, having higher, more common rates of divorce, you're experiencing so many more struggles and again, lack of communication skills. And that's just divorce, not even the erotic pieces that I'm really passionate about talking about. But if
I
we
think there's a different reason that
go for
though.
it, yeah, totally.
Poor people get married less because marriage is about property relations. So poor people
Mm,
get married less and get out of marriages more easily because
mm,
marriage is fundamentally a property thing. You know what I mean?
sure, sure, totally.
And poor people are pathologized for not marrying as much. Like that's what a lot of the welfare rhetoric is, like, oh, these terrible
Mm,
single mothers. But
yeah,
it's like if you don't have anything to share with other people through marriage, like you don't have any inheritance or health insurance through a job or immigration status
yeah,
or whatever. And so I always feel like that's important to put in there because it's so pathologized.
right. And cost less for a lawyer, I imagine, because that whole process is expensive too.
It's expensive to get a divorce. I mean, getting married is generally a bad idea for so many reasons.
Yeah,
I say that as your
financially.
lawyer.
Yeah.
I would say if there's something you want that requires getting married, like immigration status or something,
Right.
just marry someone who you're not fucking. Just
Right.
marry a
Exactly.
friend. You
Yes.
know, I was just in Berlin and there was all these workshops on solidarity marriages. Like just marry people as like an act of solidarity and make the agreements there similar. I recommend people have kids with people they're not fucking. Like that's a big piece of labor you're taking on. That's a lot of work and conflict. Like do it in the most stable relationship you can find to do it in, and that is rarely the
Hmm.
one where you have a crush.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I know. I remember when my professor saying, "Don't start a private practice with people that you're romantically connected to." It's a bad idea. Bad idea. I'm like, it's funny that we then say like, have a child with those, something
I
that was
probably,
arguably more challenging in some ways.
yeah. But sorry,
Um,
I totally cut in.
no,
You were
you're
talking
good.
about divorce rates, and I am very curious.
uh I was just, even if we ballpark it at 50, it's wild to me that if my friend was about to get on a plane with a 50% crash rate, I'd be like, are we preparing for this? Like, I'm gonna miss you. Like, wow, we gotta, but God forbid, one of my friends who's like deep in the romance myth, like super excited about the wedding dress and the whole thing. If I come up to her and say, hey, are you prepared for the chance that this is gonna end horribly? And like, how are you dealing? Like, then I'm the bad friend because I don't believe in her and her love, right? And so it's such a catch 22 depending on who you're talking to. Because I am very grateful that a lot of people in my community are having these conversations. Like you're saying, like, how do I get married to a friend? You need immigration status. I need insurance. How do we navigate all of this? Because there's a lot of deconstructing around what the word marriage means. It's all very existential meaning making, right? Like, but then when some of my other people in my community don't have that same frame, like I think they would find what I'm saying to be rude or like really mean to their image and their cultural meaning of what that word marriage means in their symbolism of their relationship.
Yeah, and I think it's like people have cultural relationships to marriage that are outside of the legal structure. So also sometimes I'm just like, could you do it without doing the legal part just to save yourself a little bit of, or whatever. There's so many other ways to think about this stuff. But also I think I also want people to just question marriage is a method of social control.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean we don't want things that are socially controlling. Like we all want tons of things that are what we're also scripted to want. But it's just like I think the point of being radical is that you let yourself try to cultivate critical distance. It doesn't, it's like you and I are both wearing clothes and that's culturally normative. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah,
tons of
yeah, yeah,
things
yeah.
we're all doing that are culturally normative. But there's nothing like wrong with surviving and getting by and trying to figure out our desires. But I think for me, a lot of what being in radical community is about is being like allowed to critically engage about our desires. And a lot of what being queer is about for me is that. And being anti-capitalist, it's like, why do I want this? And like, who told me to want this? And
Yeah.
what is it I think this is going to make, why do I think this is going to make me happy? And like, what am I not looking at in order to believe that so wholeheartedly, And
Mm-hmm.
um, I feel like this is just a really it's not about there's not a right way to do relationships. I don't think
No.
there is. You can treat people badly in any
Yeah.
format of a relationship, and people mostly do. But
Yeah,
I
totally.
just for our own freedom, like what does it mean to like just be like, who put this idea in my head?
Right.
Is it mine?
Right.
Like do I believe it on a deeper level than the like reactive level,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which can
Yeah.
feel like a very deep level. I mean, the thing is too, there's so much stuff in the attachment literature about this, right? But like
Right.
if we start dating, I may feel like a kind of, and you don't call me back, I may feel like I'm gonna die. I mean, I was thinking about this when you
Absolutely.
were talking about
Yeah.
15 minutes to go through an urge, right? Like I've so many people contact me or my close friends who are like, I'm going bananas because I'm dating someone and for some reason I'm freaking out when they don't contact me back. Help me. Like, how do I, like it's like intense. Like I can have just met you 3 weeks ago and be really crushed out on you and feel like I'm gonna die because you don't call me.
Yeah.
This is heavy stuff. It's also like a lot of beautiful stuff to work with about
Right.
our aliveness and about like really asking ourselves like what is the ground upon which I am resting? What is the gravity of my being? How am I socially in a web? Like what makes me safe? Like these kind of deeper questions. But like when we got the romance myth running in the background, and then I have those normal reactions, or you have them to me, and we're doing that dance, it's easy to either quickly escalate or really hurt each other. And then, you're not into calling me back, and then I tell people in the community that you're, have bad unethical dating practices and now we're all against you, or any number of things, right?
Yeah.
Or we have sex and I think it means this and you think it means that, and
All
now
right.
everyone's mad at each other, all the things. It's just heavy. And I feel like that is part of why we have no choice but to interrogate some of these assumptions, because they really are tearing apart a
Mm-hmm.
lot of our community
Mm-hmm.
connections.
Absolutely. I mean, so much of the world you're going through where you have the button up collar and people ask how you're doing and you say fine, right? Fine, fine. And so then in the romantic space, that's the person, quote unquote, the one person that I get to be like, wow, no, I felt really suicidal this week and this is happening and all of that. And like, it's often the one space that we go for intimacy, especially depending on gender stereotypes and what is told to be okay and all the intersecting identities around that. Often these romantic spaces are the quote unquote one space where you feel seen, with so much cultural intimacy disconnection with everything that you're doing in the workspaces and other communities. And so you can imagine when we're so hungry, or so hungry, and then you get that opportunity that here's this person who's going to love me, all this. Of course, you're panicking that they're not texting you back. There is that one space, right? And I especially think about the metaphor. I wrote a newsletter about the cookie jar, right? Particularly around eroticism, where, with the kids, with you tell them like, oh, you get one cookie, that's it, one cookie, one cookie, and the cookies are going to go in this jar here at the top of the shelf and you cannot touch that. The second the parents aren't home, the kids come rushing to the jar, stuff their face full of the jar, and then get a horrible stomach ache. And I feel like so many of us are doing that in terms of intimacy and eroticism because we've been told one, if only one. Some people don't even get access to one, but many people have access to one. And then when you have the possibility of more, right, we really just stuff our face with it because we haven't learned the appropriate skills of like gauging our appetite and how to do this in appropriate ways. And so I have so much empathy for the parts of ourselves that really want to just like gorge on connection and gorge on connection. And I really hope people see that not as a failing of themselves, but as like a society that has really kept us isolated from one another, from our deep needs, which is intimacy and touch. Right? So of course this is such a survival moment. Of course this feels like you want so many of that because that's a good desire to have. And also, how do we do it in a way that's safe, right? Safe for the community, right? I do fundamentally believe that the more you have that satiation, right? The more you have water, food, the less you're craving. Of course, there are people who still crave in complicated ways, but the like claws, teeth out level of experience, the feralness really is, I guess, what I'm alluding to. I do think it gets better when you have a snuggle pile of people that you can come home to and do a cuddle with, right? And I think most people don't have that. Even a lot of people in marriages feel, oh God, as a couples therapist, I see shit all the time where people don't talk to one another. They're married for years, say I love you, but are holding such deep secrets inside and won't even say it to the person that they live with, they're close with, all of that, let alone the rest of the world. So like, of course we're yearning for this. And of course it's such a mess when we do it because we just don't have the skills.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's like most people have been denied opportunities to feel belonging, to feel part
Yep.
of a group and valued. When you were talking, I was actually just thinking about the history of my own awareness of having like this major connection wound, like growing up in a kind of situation of like neglect,
Mm.
where a lot of how I got my needs met would be getting my friends' parents to like me, and then they would
Mm.
like do things like make me a lunch or whatever. And so
Sure.
had this skill set where I could make someone like me, and I would turn off my awareness of whether or not I liked them. And so it's been a plus in that I actually can kind of see the potential in anyone. And this has been really great sometimes when I'm organizing, because I'm just like, maybe they're going to come along, and I will like give anyone a shot to like join a radical thing. And other
Yeah.
people would be like, are you kidding me that they're turned off earlier? But the downside is I often am so oriented towards like, because at that time I found safety through every single connection I could make, try to get every teacher to like me, try to get everybody's parent,
Mm.
or whatever, anybody, that I want to form a meaningful connection with literally everyone I meet.
Yeah.
And I meet
Yeah.
a lot of people. And so I can't. So then I'm like, I like literally want to be best friends with like everyone. And it is,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily like a sexual thing, that it has shown up a bit in my sexual life, but it's also just like I just like love people in this way that like has a lot of wonderful values aligned stuff in it. But there's this other thing where like, can I know when something doesn't feel good? That took me, it was really out of my 20s before I could figure that out. Like, oh, I don't like this. I don't want to
Mm.
be closer to this person.
Yeah.
This isn't for me. And can I be like, oh, my plate's full right now. I can't add another, like, I'll overstuff my time. Like this is, different times in my life, it's been
Mm.
worse or better. But just like, it's just a connection wound. And I have friends who have the opposite connection wound. They
Mm.
feel suspicious of everyone. They don't like people they know knowing each other.
Right.
They feel
Yeah.
safer when they're controlling connection and when they're the one saying no and they're the one moderating how much contact. And like I really understand that too. Like they often had like over too much intervening in their early lives by
Mm-hmm.
adults, and as opposed to neglect. And they are trying to like
Right.
get some space.
Right.
And both of these patterns, I mean, obviously I'm oversimplifying because, we all do all these features in
Right.
sometimes in places,
Yep.
but yeah, and I also, what you said also made me think about like the dating apps and social media and how they give an impression that there's an unending number of
Mm.
people out there who are like cooler and better and hotter or whatever than my current friends or dates. And this can really cause people to be very like disposing of one
Yeah.
another. And like the secret trick, I'll tell you as someone who's almost 50, is that like actually that you're going to see them all again.
Yeah,
Like
especially in queer community.
like we're stuck with each other. And so the idea that like I can kind of just like judge and ditch like the current friends or the current people I'm organizing with because there's like I've got some big anonymous audience out there of better people I'm going to climb is super fucking toxic. And it's like, what, how would you treat the people around you if you thought like these people are going to be the ones who are here when I'm in a crisis next,
Right.
or I'm still going to be seeing these people around in 20 years if we're alive? Like, because that's how it actually is. And
Right.
that kind of imagination of endless gluttony of connection, I think, can lead to some of that, like a lot of ghosting, a lot of,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge, huge function of our society under capitalism. Next product, next thing, toss out the old one. And so we do that in our relationships. And so it's heartbreaking that we're in a space where that is so deep in our communities. And I really appreciate you naming your personal experience as well as some of the other people. I feel like I've experienced both, as you named. It's not, I think that's like such an important update to the field of attachment, is that each relationship will bring out different sides of you. Granted, you might have a predominant pattern, but each relationship will pull out things of you, sides of yourself that you never thought existed. And if you have a predominant pattern, like you're saying, to really like put people up on a pedestal and look to them so much, maybe because as a child, like you needed that love, right? You were a child who needed that. And so when you're yearning, 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 because that's very normal to co-regulate with a parent, makes sense to have that as a pattern. Or for your friend who you named as more what we'd say classically, quote unquote, avoidant, right? Doesn't want to connect because maybe their parent was all up in their space all the time, helicoptering all the time, right? It makes sense to say connection feels smothering, and so I want that out, right? Now, we need to be able to apply that compassion to ourselves. So many people really struggle to have that compassion first for the self, right? You see that that's your pattern, and we go down this deep, dark spiral of why am I so messed up? Why do I do this? Why do I do this, right? It's because you're trying to keep yourself safe. I think when we can come back to that, that's where you then get to do the healing work and change it. But if you keep going down the self-criticism and attack and attack and attack, you're not going to make any movement. And then now, a lot of people can apply that compassion to the self, but then the second it happens to somebody else, we like to use a big label. They're a narcissist. Fucked that guy. Like, absolutely not. Hate him, like, and then as you're saying, in communities, then that begins the campaign phase where it's like, hey, he's a piece of shit. If you're friends with him, then you're not friends with me, right? And then that's how the ecosystem of the community starts to just fall apart into these campaigns. And I think that was one of my biggest questions for you when I was thinking about getting to connect with you again today was, as someone who's dated in community and really experienced a lot of this, it's like what is that line between community care? Hey, this person did these things. I'm really concerned about how they treat people and all of this, versus unhealthy gossip that's
Hmm.
campaigning. And I know you're not God as much as I wish you could be in this moment to give me the perfect A or B dichotomous way of knowing. But I'm curious how you kind of differentiate between healthy community safety and sharing of experience and even just co regulation versus campaigning and unhealthy processing and gossip.
Hmm. I mean, I think the thing that makes there's a few, I think what I've been doing lately is recommending like a set of practices that I think can help us hold this. So one is
Mm,
like when we have feedback from somebody, give it to them directly before posting online about it. Things like that, right? So like the first thing is even just like have I given you the chance to know that you did that? And also we all have to give you the feedback because like for me at least, it's sometimes the first five people who gave me the feedback about something important, I couldn't
yeah.
hear it.
Yeah.
Right, like
Yeah.
that's most of us require, especially if something that really matters that we're kind of not conscious of or that has a shame or shadow side. So all of us giving each other more direct feedback and before we go tell the entire world. The second thing is we all do need to like rant and rave about how bad things are when we're really upset. So could the other person not tell others? So if I come to you and I'm just like, I can't believe this person's treating me this way in our dating or in our meeting or in our roommate situation, could you assume that's a confidential conversation? And check it out with me if you really plan to tell others, because that causes so much extra drama. And then I feel paranoid, or the other person feels paranoid because people are talking about us. And it's like, I think that's like a massively missing skill in our communities.
Yeah.
And could you also encourage me to give the person direct feedback? And could you also discourage me from doing vengeful things? All of that would help. And so if we were all doing that, if we were holding people during a big emotional reaction and really like staying with them and not minimizing what happened to them and listening to them, but also not joining a campaign, but just like really being like, oh my God, Nicole, that sounds so disappointing. Wow, that sounds so hard. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Instead of like, oh, it's not that big a deal, or let me give you a piece of advice to shut you up, or let me go,
Right.
join the campaign. You know, I think a lot of people wouldn't go on rampages against one another if they
Right.
actually felt heard.
Yeah.
And then also we wouldn't have the extra disorganization of like, I can't believe you told everybody about this and you didn't come to me, all of that stuff that
Right.
leads to like now we're in a bigger fight that's could be long term and we're telling other people about how fucked up the other one is and we're doing like stuff to try to protect our reputations. And then there are instances, I mean, there are absolutely instances where if I'm dating person after person in our community and being violent towards them, it might be appropriate if a new person who's my type moves to the community for you to be like, hey, Dean's like not a safe date, or like people have done these kinds of processes. But I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about when is the appropriate time for that kind of
Right.
process. And for me, that would need to include that people have tried to work with the person to stop what they're doing, have tried to offer support like multiple times. It's really hard to change patterns of harm, and that people are like both protecting those who might be, on my path of, and also, there's so much collaboration that people do with harm doers. There's so much like our entire group knows that I keep sexually harassing every young person who joins and no one stops it. Or, like, so like stopping the cultural norm of supporting people doing especially sexual harm, doing the direct feedback stuff, because a lot of what happens, the point of transformative justice is to try to find right sized responses. And a lot of
Mm,
the responses in our communities are not right sized. They're either we didn't do anything to support the person who experienced harm or prevent harm, or we, went out for blood and like I cheated on you, but now it's like you've all gotten me evicted and had me lose my job. And you know what I mean? Like things that are just like not right sized.
right. Right.
I was just talking to some people last night about like they feel that in their community, there's no discussion about how alcohol use impacts the safety of different events. So it's like
Mm,
that's like
sure.
like there's often things we can all be doing to be like what does lead to a lot of um or talking in our groups about doing relationship skills work in our groups or in our communities so that we have like even a shared narrative about how it's not great to become isolated in a romantic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That might really reduce or doing something I've talked about a lot with people. People often get really frustrated by a friend who's in a relationship they don't approve of, where they don't feel like their
Mm,
friend's being treated well.
yeah.
And then they ditch their friend. They're like, I'm so
Yeah.
annoyed, Nicole. It's the third time you've told me how much you want to leave this person and you're not doing it. And I'm so sick of hearing it. And then I start giving
Yeah.
you the cold shoulder. But it takes people, I think the research is like it takes people an average of like 5 or 7 times of going to a crisis point often in a relationship before really
Right.
considering changing it because it's really
Yeah.
hard in our society to leave relationships for lots of good reasons that are
Right.
very, structural and emotional. So
Yeah.
like Can we stick with people longer? Can we be supportive of people even when they're in relationships we don't like because it's for their safety and we don't want them to be further isolated? And isolation is one of the main things that bad relationships do. I don't know, I just think there's all
Right.
these things we could work on
Yes.
that because the question you're asking, of course, as you say, it's impossible to know exactly when that moment is, but there's like 600 things we could do that would make that moment less consequential. That moment is so consequential when you're basically on your own
Right.
and you don't have any support and you've been through something horrible and no one's listening to you and all you can do is go on this campaign and like that it's like so much is setting that up for you and all the people around you and the person who's doing something uncool to you that we would want them to stop.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the fundamental question is always like, what will make the person who's doing something harmful stop? Like, what would
Yeah.
they need? Who would they need to hear from? What might be contributing to it? What are they misunderstanding? What would make the person who's getting or people who are getting harmed like be able to feel like they were heard, they could still participate in community? We can't make it never have happened, but can we
Mm-hmm.
be like, what do you need to still be able to come to the gym or to the meeting or like whatever it is, these sites that that you might feel isolated from now and to feel
Right.
like you have people who care about you. And what do we as a whole community need to do to assess how the setting we created cultivated this? What were we all doing that made this more likely to happen? And could we do something different? Like, do people need rides or do people need
Mm-hmm.
do we need to talk more about consent in our community or
Mm-hmm.
do we need what do we need to talk more about how to use party drugs in ways where the people are supported? Like, what do we need?
Yep.
I feel like those three questions, people always want to instead go to like, who's bad? Who's
Yeah,
bad here?
exactly, exactly. Right. Well, because it's so much easier for our psyches, right? Black and white, good, bad, black and white. It's really hard to sit with the nuance, let alone the nuance of two conflicting emotions at the same time in the psyche. We can have literally the opposite emotions at the same time about an occurrence, a person, all of it. That's a lot to hold rather than trying to stay in the one black or white. And I mean, all of this, as you were speaking, it's like, in my last year of my life of navigating this in my own communities, it's like shut off my sexuality in the strongest way, like, which I think is
So
an
sorry.
appropriate,
It
it's an
sucks. Yeah.
appropriate, yeah, yeah, but I mean, yeah, thank you. It's an appropriate, when I was listening to your episode with another person, it was like, remembering that we're all growing and learning together. And so no matter where, you, me, all the listeners, when you're doing this sort of exploration, it's gonna be messy, especially when you bring in sexuality and you're trying to have multiple sexual dynamics in a community space, whether it's a gym, a workspace, any of that. You start to feel all the things that you just said. And my body has been like, you come into the open connecting space so optimistic, so, wow, this is so beautiful, we're all gonna connect. And then you get there and you're like, oh, this is actually really complicated. I want to vet people way better before and like really assess if this is someone that I even want to cross into that complex space of navigating all of this hot caramel terrain. Like, I mean, with the people I feel safe to do that with, my sexuality is alive and well, but like the optimism that I once had about like these super transformative communities, like it's in such a space of like, I think a bit more realism. Just in terms of like our current context and setting does not make this easy for any group. And so you have to hold all those sorts of questions that you're asking, as well as the question of what sort of traumas from myself are projecting into the situation to make it worse than it really is. And that's where I think it is, again, as you named, you got to be careful of who you're processing with. And it starts to get even more complex when everybody's interconnected, where anybody in your close circle is going to be impacted by the story you tell of the trauma that you're processing. It gets much harder when we're so in community, but the community is your place to process. It's a little easier when you got that friend in a different state where you can get a little bit of a sounding feedback board, but you want to be able to process with other people to like assess, like, is this my own sexual trauma that's making me project onto this person like this whole experience? And sometimes it is, right? And so we have to be able to sit in all of that. But I do think that it's a good place to be. Like, if when we're connecting and going through conflict, if all of us were to get curious and ask, am I campaigning or is this community care? Even that question alone, great. The fact that we're pausing for that question, yes, great. Great place to start and get really critical about.
Yeah, and also I think when we're listening to someone else's story, like they're really frustrated by something that happened in the meeting or with their lover or with their
Yeah.
roommate or whatever, just noticing, do I have like autopilot reactions that come up? Do I
Mm,
want to shut you up with advice? Do I want to merge in loyalty so thoroughly
yeah.
that I stir up even more emotion in you? A lot of these things were learned in our families. Do I want to go talk shit around the community for you? And when I see them again, feel like bad about them in the space? Like, what did I learn growing up was the right thing to do when someone else is upset? I think this is a lot of why people don't keep each other's confidences and actually like
Mm,
stir the pot and make community conflict worse, is because we're
yeah.
not tracking our own responses.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just like, okay, Nicole's really upset and telling me about it. What are my principles again? I want Nicole to not have any consequences that weren't intended by like me going around and saying what you said to everybody. I want Nicole to feel heard. So I want to try to keep my attention, not get too distracted, not make it about me. I
Right.
want to like hear you all the way out. I also want to remember your principles. Like if we're friends, I want to remember like Nicole doesn't really believe in revenge. So even if she's considering revenge right now, I'm going to be here helping her hold on to her principles. You know what I mean? Like this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Like, can I have intentions? And a lot of times the person who's ranting and raving you isn't like your good friend, or it's like somebody in the meeting who just rants and raves at everybody. And I'm just like, could I just also be fucking patient and compassionate about that? I can still be like, oh, half an hour's gone by, I gotta go. But like I
Yeah.
feel like there's a kind of like I could judge someone who does that a lot, or I could just be like, that's where they're at, dude. Like,
Mm-hmm.
may they be well. Can I be a force of non-harm in being one of the cushions that catches them? Or if I can't do it, I cannot do it. But like my own hope for myself is that I can become responsive to conditions that are happening around me, like, and as flexible about that as possible with the kinds of people who might appear before me, doing what kinds in what kinds of states, have boundaries so that I know I'm saying yes on purpose, and that I'm not being forced to do this, and I'm not telling myself that I'm the victim because I'm having to listen to somebody or
Yeah.
hear them out or whatever. But can I just like help us all in my tiny way, because we all do this, like stay on track by like, we are a bunch of toddlers going around freaking out. Can I hold your toddler with you for a few minutes if that's necessary, and not go and tell everybody what your toddler said about them, you know? I
Mm-hmm.
just, it's like, and also know that I don't have to do it. Like, but for me, I actually want to do that. That
Yeah.
is that's one of the ways I would like to be of service, maybe also because I'm old and have heard it all before, and
Yeah.
maybe I especially want to support younger people who are having reactive experiences because they're doing stuff for the first time, which is so much harder than doing it for the 17th time. It's so much harder to start dating or do kink or do polyamory or join a group
Yeah.
you really care about or decide to break the law together. All these things when you're new at it. It's like, of course,
Mm-hmm.
and that's beautiful. And can we all like, and that's not always young people. Sometimes you meet someone who's very old and doing something for the first time.
Right.
Hopefully we're all doing new things all the time. But like, can we just accompany each other
Mm.
a bit, you know? It's like I do feel like
Mm-hmm.
it is some kind of like parental energy of just like I'm gonna just kind of be a stable ground for a moment while you, if you need to have a bit of a explosion of feeling or
Yeah.
go through kind of a wave of emotion or reaction, and I'm gonna try to help you remember all the other things about you too when you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
Like in case you were about to go off the deep end of something that's not really the action that doesn't really sound like your values, you know?
Right. Right. And that's what it means to be an elder.
Yeah, or just a friend or whatever,
Yep.
comrade, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Someone who has at least walked the path to know some of the like the point, the arrows, the signposts, right?
I was just trying to make the book to be to actually just give people a shortcut. I'm just like,
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
the book I wish I had when I was 20. These are the common because that's the thing with the
Yeah.
self-help literature at its best is like here are the common patterns, but the
Yeah.
self-help literature is like terrible and racist and sexist and all this stuff. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
even though I've never gone through it before, even if I'm somebody who doesn't date, but you're
Hmm.
my friend and you date, and I'm like seeing the romance within you, can I be like, can I still like help you signpost that, even
Right.
if I haven't been through it. Could we
Hmm.
just know in the same way that we can study the ways that racism or patriarchy or anything comes up in our lives and be like, hey, wait, we're spotting it together. Let's work with this in a different way?
Hmm. Absolutely. And as you named, it's so important to really slow down and be present with your friend who's in that space, right? Because when you're in so much of that pain and suffering when something has occurred, a lot of this is grief work that we don't have the skills for, right? And so if I come to you and you try to be the calm person who's, maybe let's go for the first case scenario that I don't love is when I come to a person and a friend will go, oh, well, they're an asshole. I'm like, that does not sit with me, right? Because at least my like therapist brain is always thinking about how we try to keep ourselves safe and connected. And even some of the most maladaptive things are attempts at that, right? Whether connection was unsafe, again, going back to the helicopter person, push away, push away, push away, because I need to stay connected to self. Or the opposite, right? In terms of I want connection, so I'm going to negate the self. I don't find it helpful to say like, oh, that person's an asshole or that person's blank blank blank. It feels like it's like the tip of the iceberg and missing the whole thing that's underneath. And so for me, that feels like a moment where like my pain is being shut down because we're just trying to slap this very simple band-aid on the top of like a sinking ship. And also, like you said, not shutting people down in terms of simple platitudes or advice because it goes back to the still face experiment with the baby. For the listener who doesn't know, they did these experiments with parents where the baby would be reacting and then the parent would attune to them with similar reactions. And then they had the baby be there and then the parent be completely still, completely flat. And as that happened, the child started flailing and trying to make attempts for connection, screaming and crying because it's so unnatural for us to be sitting across from someone who's completely flat, which we can talk about the tabula rasa of psychology and the whole thing there. It's a whole so it's not healthy to be completely flat, to be clear. And so if you come to someone in all that suffering, you're like, it's okay, whatever. Like that is going to amplify them even more. Like, I need to go on this campaign. No one is seeing me, right?
Yeah.
And so we do play a very crucial role when our friends do come to us of like, hey, this sounds really tough. I see like a lot of reflective listening and mirroring back. Like, I hear you saying this. I hear it's impacting you in this way. I'm hearing that this happened. And that does a lot of work to feel seen. Again, like the baby and the reaction, right? You feel attuned to again. And then maybe, hey, yeah, rather than doing that crazy thing, can we go over here and like, burn some paper together of what you want to release or go on a run and actually like quite literally move, take a boxing class. You got a lot of anger. Let's go take an actual boxing class and like get that out in terms of somatic rituals that we can do as well as meaning making rituals. If we want to like burn some paper or things that feel like we're releasing stuff, like
Yeah,
it
cutting
comes back
cords
to
with people.
totally. It's like grief
Love that.
rituals that we don't have skills for essentially.
Yeah, it's interesting too. Like something I've been thinking a lot about is resentment, and I've been doing some more workshops on this recently. Like,
Mm,
there's so much resentment in our communities for good reasons, right? Like, we're
yeah.
all living in a coercive society. We've been forced to work and go to school under terrible conditions. We've not had a choice in our lives. People have not shown us solidarity. People have been relentlessly sexist and racist and ableist. And, it's like there's so many reasons to feel resentful. The problem with the resentment is that it can make you become like you feel like you're being empowered when you actually are being like unsatisfiable. Like no amount of apology will ever be enough. I see this a lot in
Yeah.
community groups. Like, people try to make repair and it's like, I just want you to suffer forever. That like resentment can drive that. Resentment can drive like, I'm so powerful. I refuse to meet with you, Nicole, about our
Mm,
disagreement. Like it's like I think I'm empowering myself, but I'm isolating myself and
yeah.
I'm not experiencing the real grief, heartbreak, betrayal, terror that the situation brought up. Instead, I'm getting stuck in like a thought pattern about how bad you are and how good I am and how I need other people to see it or how I need to withdraw my energy from our group or from our household or like, and people just get into these like contempt patterns. And that really worries me. The unsatisfiability really worries me. Like we need to complete the cycle. You need to become someone who can give me a good apology, and I need to become someone who can actually be like, you know what? Okay, like I can see that you're trying not to do it again. Maybe it wasn't exactly perfect. We didn't see it exactly the same way, but I don't need to punish you for the rest of your life and stigmatize you in our community or keep you out. Like it's just like, how do we notice spaces where we've become unsatisfiable?
Mm,
And how do we support one another to like let in, like, because the thing about forgiveness is it's truly like I have to recognize how we can never undo it. The thing you did
yeah.
to me that
Right.
hurt me, like we can never go back to a time when it didn't happen. So grief is the missing element that I think causes resentment because it's like, since you can't restore me to before this happened, Like I have to grieve it and be like, okay, and I've decided to move on because the resentment is poisonous for me.
Yeah, I think about how painful it is to open up those narratives, right? These tender parts of our lives where we've created this narrative of bad person. You're asking me, Dean, to go back into that, to open up that wound, the part that I have really closed with this simple narrative of bad person, never talking to them again, like excommunicated, throwing them away, right? Which I know we don't stand for, but like that's the safe space. And so you're asking
Mhm.
me to really open all of that back up and now create a new, more nuanced, complex narrative of that person being a fallible human, the concepts of transformative justice. That's scary. I felt, quote unquote, security by this very simple narrative. And then the deeper
Yeah.
question, too, is that person who caused the harm ready to come to the table with accountability? And even that's that other piece, too. Even if the person who's been hurt says, like, I am ready to open up that wound and to create a more nuanced story and all of that. But if that other person comes to the table and still refuses to acknowledge the ways that they were a participant in this, you could actually get reharmed, which is a whole other piece because the complexity of all of this is that humans are very uncontrollable variables. Here's the pain. It's part of what we
I
love
also
about
think we
it.
don't.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I also think that the other person doesn't have to participate. I have done
Interesting.
that process when the other person was dead, right? I think
Okay.
that's the other thing too. Like I can decide to let go of resentment even if the other person doesn't think they did anything wrong, is dead, is that not emotionally capable of having a real conversation about anything, which so many people's parents and
Yeah. Yeah.
other
Yeah.
harm doers are not.
Yeah,
Like
right.
I'm
Right.
like I can still I actually had this experience. I don't know if other people have this, but the process of beginning to have babies in my life and
Mm,
living with my nephews and other having a lot of babies around. And I was like, oh, no matter what the caregivers, my parents and foster parents and whatever didn't do, if I'm alive, I experienced an enormous amount of care. And I tried to really let that rewrite the story of my early childhood. Like, I can't remember that care, but I obviously received so much care. And I had spent some years doing healing work where I let myself see what I had not received. And that was
mm,
important for
mm.
understanding some of my wounding patterns and some of my own
Yeah.
behavior.
Yeah.
But then it was equally important to be like, oh my God, I received so much care. I do not need to have a simple story about any of these people, as limited as their capacities were in some ways, and also like letting in more what they lived through, what woundings brought their limitations as caregivers or adults around me, and just like
Yeah.
this lifetime process of growing more compassion for people who have been challenging for me. And nobody has to do this. You cannot do this because someone tells you to do it. And
Right.
forgiveness or any of these things are like they can never be mandatory, but it's actually like liberating for me. Like I'm not doing it because they deserve to be free of it or whatever. Most of them, they're pretty much dead, but like
Yeah.
I'm doing it so that I can be free of this rigid, narrow place, and so that I can become more forgiving of all people and just have more space for how everybody is right now when we do something to each other right now, not years later, because I've actually deeply let myself learn about, yeah, what you said, that people are fallible, that everyone's actually doing their best, even when it's
Yeah.
so shitty, that
Mm-hmm.
there are deep causes and conditions for everything that's going on that is unsatisfactory and painful and violent, and again, like none of this is about anyone having to do this, but I just think like for those of us who feel that resentment is limiting some part of our experience, it can be really relieving.
Yeah, what's the saying? It's like resentment is wanting
When I
your
drink the poison and think it's going to kill you.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a saying for a reason.
Mhm.
And I'm curious for you when you're going through all of these experiences, navigating with all the different people in your community, feeling where you have the space to have these conversations rather than having to have them on your own. You had also named that because of your experience in the past, it was hard to attune to yourself and notice when you really liked the people around you or all these other things. I'm curious for you, what are some of the signs now that you notice in yourself that maybe you didn't know when you were younger?
That's a great question. I think there's like a kind of checking in with myself that I now actually do even during the hangout or conversation, or sometimes it's after it. Sometimes it's like
Mm,
just like an hour after it or something where I'm just like, oh, do I really want to spend more time with that person, or am I on autopilot of like, I want them to feel that I want to spend more time with them. I'm orienting towards what they want. Or
right.
like I think when I was a kid, I turned off my intuition about people being like a little weird or overstepping my boundaries and things like that because I just
Yeah.
needed
Yeah.
to get by with connection with people. So just like paying attention to that. I think I spent years paying attention to how my friends who had a better skill with that did it. It's like,
Mm,
how do you know that person
right.
feels not like someone you want to spend more time with, or that you don't want to? I mean, when I was really young, I didn't couldn't even tell if I had a crush on somebody or if they just had a crush on me. I just was like, oh,
Mm,
I'm supposed to like them back. Just like that
yeah.
kind of orientation. So I think just like years of paying attention to how other people did it, and then maybe even it's just even bothering to ask the question, like even
Yeah.
thinking that is relevant. Like, what do I like? What do I want? And then also like experiments in relationships with friends, all kinds of people, of being like, oh, I'm going to assert my preference
Mm-hmm.
instead of like I should just be really interested in whatever they like and have want, to eat, to go where to go, like just years of that. And of course, I think there's always been another side. There's other parts of my life where where I'm controlling or where I'm over asserting my
Sure.
preferences or I'm rigid. I mean, it's like all these things, but it's all we're all
Humbling.
behaving on all sides of the coin. But I think for me, especially with like, I do book events. I'll meet like 50 people in a night, like a lot frequently,
Yeah.
and I have to
Yeah.
really be like, can I feel myself? Do
Mm,
I, am I getting swept up in the energy of what someone else wants? What do I want? And I think
yeah.
that's become over time with tons and tons and tons of practice, like because I've been doing a lot of public work for, almost 30 years, like, uh, just a little more like the question occurs to me. Oftentimes
Mm-hmm.
in conversation with somebody, I'm really much like an external processor, and I'll
Mm,
often it's like I'm with a friend or a lover, and I'm like, whoa, the end of that event felt like this, or I'm not sure if that person's somebody I want to spend more time with or whatever.
yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It sounds like a embodied meditation with yourself, an embodied connection present with yourself, a practice where you're scanning, right? Whether
Mhm.
it's the actual somatic experience or the mental experience, and obviously those are connected, but really assessing for yourself whether it feels like something that brings more connection, the values in your life, the things that feel authentic to you.
There's also like a pragmatic thing about time
Oh,
specifically.
sure.
I don't know
Yeah.
if anyone who's listening can relate to this, but like I have this thing where if I see any gap in my schedule and then someone asks me anything, I immediately am like, oh yes, either I have a half an hour free on Tuesday, December 18th, or like
Yeah,
literally,
exactly.
that's how it is. So I have had to be like, and I've had so much feedback from my intimate people that
Yeah.
I severely overwork. They don't feel like they have time with me. This
Mm,
has been, years and years of working on this. I've used the 12-step program Workaholics Anonymous. So
well,
this kind of thing of being like, don't promise your time.
yeah.
Like in this conversation, if you were like, Dean, can you have a Zoom with me, next week? I would be like, I'll get back to you. Like I just sometimes, or if you were like, Dean, can you come speak to my class this day? I'd be like, I'll get back to you. I just a waiting period
Yes.
where I'm like, wait, what is else are that 700,000 other things that I have not done in a long time, like had any time alone or,
Yeah. My
exercised
laundry.
or
Yeah.
I really wanted to, like connect with this other person and we've been looking for a time for a long time and now I'm just giving it to the first person, just
Yeah.
I like it's and there was a period of time where I couldn't accept any speaking engagements without running them by my dear friend Angelica,
Mm,
because I would forget if you imagine there's a column of pros and cons. I couldn't even imagine the cons column about anything that involved connection. I just wanted to say yes to anybody because oh my God, they're radical and they believe in this work and they want something from me and I want to give it to them. You know what
yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
And I just like had all these rationales for my usual, which is fundamentally this trauma thing. And I just had to be like I need to talk to Angelica and she can be like, Dean, that's going to take like 24 hours for you to travel to that place to do this event. And da, da, da. Or, actually, yes, that's a great time of year for you to go there and that, or whatever. Like just help me get control of the monster within the yes
Yeah.
monster.
Right, right. And so where you're at today, I'm sure is even more connected than at the beginning and thinking about the longevity of your life, right? It's a continued relationship. And so I would hope that in the coming years, you keep building off of this connection, right? Of
Mhm.
knowing what it feels like to be really present with yourself and have that know and the waiting period, right? And so it really is that practice. And in that way, I see it as very meditative.
Yeah, I mean, so much of this has also been built for me by doing like long silent meditation retreats,
Mm.
because then I watch all the thinking, and it's so the connection wound shows up so much. Like I'll be on the first day of the retreat, I'm sitting there thinking about people who I should probably get in touch with later and what email I'm gonna write. It's like I just notice my
Yeah.
coping mechanisms, which can just find little homes all day in my normal life. If you take the retreat, if you go to the retreat and take all the communication away, I get to find out about what is just automatic, automatically generated, and then be like, oh, I want more critical distance between myself and that habit.
Hmm.
I want to be choosing when I do that. I want to know why I'm reaching out to someone or why I'm responding or saying yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the power of responding rather than reacting. And again, if we're asking ourselves those questions, right? Is this, again, not simple bifurcations, but is this campaigning or is this community care, right? That question is the pause moment. That moment someone asks you to do the event, right? And you pause, you wait, right? That's the power of responding rather than just immediate flinch, or what's the word, autonomic sort of reacting in terms of just whatever our patterns are both in the body and in the mind. And so that's such an important skill. When I think about the feminist revolution of psychology, they talked a lot about zest as a sign of a good relationship, which is that energy, that feeling of a life force, that feeling of connection. And they would say that good relationships make you want to be connected more. And so I feel like that's always been something that I think about too, is who are the people in my life that make me want to connect with more people? Those experiences where I really get out of a call or a connection or something like that, and then I feel like, wow, I was pulled in myself, like feeling like I need to recharge. And obviously there's a lot of that work in the movement, and as a therapist there's a lot of that work. Sometimes I get out of really tough sessions, that's part of my job, right? But in my communities I try to be as conscious as possible about what sort of relationships make me want to expand and connect with more people versus the ones that really pull me back and inward into myself and feeling like I need to retreat. And I also really like the metaphor they had given in one of the books called The Relational Revolution. This changes everything in psychology. They talked about tuning forks and how you can have 8 tuning forks in one pitch. And when you come in with the ninth, it changes all of them if it's in a different pitch. And I feel like so many times me, myself, my clients, people in my community will have like a really strong community, and then we make a new connection that's very different pitch, and we go, why do I feel so off? Why does everything feel so different? What's wrong with me that I can't withstand this thing coming into my life? And I feel like it's been a long process of accepting the fact that like people quite literally bring, this is going to sound so woo woo, but like bring an energy into your experience similar to a tuning fork. And even if it's just by the voice, right? Like all of the listeners who are tuning in right now, you're hearing the frequency of my tone. And if I was yelling at you this entire time, it's going through your ears, and you would process that as like something to be activated about. And so I think it is, my younger self would hate how woo-woo it sounds, but to think about like what sort of energy people are bringing into your life. And that's not to say to like push out people who aren't aligned, but how do you find enough balance and then also compassion for yourself when you are impacted by that's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a part of what it means to be attuned, is that people are going to impact you. And I hope that you have the skills and the resilience of the community to go back and get recharged before going into that work.
Mhm. Yeah, I used to study with generative somatics for many years,
Mm.
and we would do these kind of like yes, no, maybe practices that were like
Mm-hmm.
somatic practices. And it helped me understand, where do I do an automatic yes or an
Mm.
automatic no or an automatic maybe. I personally don't do a lot of automatic maybes. Some people go to maybe quickly because they're like,
Sure.
it's a way to not have to respond.
Yeah.
But most of us have these. Like some people are like, oh, I'm an automatic no about like, if you're like, do you want to ride on my handlebars, Dean? Like most like physical adventure that's like scary in that way, I'm like an
Yeah.
automatic no.
Yeah.
But I'm an automatic yes often to, as we said, like social things or work or there's, and so just like finding out where we are just on autopilot versus actually, like you said, like responding. And in the book, I included this like yes, no calculator,
Mm-hmm.
like just a set of questions to ask ourselves, because I think sometimes like self-help stuff is just used like at the kind of meme level to just be like to just like justify our reactivity.
Yeah.
I'm like, I found out that this is hard for me, so no one can ever approach me with it again, or something, really like um, not growthful. What I want is to become more responsive to current reality, which means trying to shed the automatic responses, whether that's the romance myth or like I can't say no when someone asks me to do work for our community, like even if I can't fit it in or it's not as important as something else I also need to do or whatever. And so like even just acknowledging that we might be on autopilot with our yeses and nos and maybes and that we might want to try for something else and that is very uncomfortable. It's so like there are times when I have felt like I had like six no's to say in email that were all things I really wanted to say yes to because I cared about the person
Mm,
who was asking or because I cared about the topic or
yeah.
whatever. And I had to say no to them. And I felt like it was the most exhausting work I did all day, even
Mm,
though it was just six emails. And maybe that day I also like facilitated several long meetings or other things that are
yeah.
harder or like walked across town or something. But like doing the thing that isn't the thing you usually do is very uncomfortable. And just like I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have experienced this during like times of the year where they see their family, or it's like it's so uncomfortable to like try to see
Mm-hmm.
your natal family and not do what you usually do. If you're like,
Yeah.
I refuse to do, or where they're going to say no to a lover about something they've always just said yes to, or where they're going to say yes about something they've always said no to, or whatever.
Yeah.
I just think like it's hard and it's okay
Mm-hmm.
that it's hard. Like as long as you feel like it's a choice to try it, and as long as you can find inside yourself, like in somatics, they say like for the sake of what?
Mm,
Like God, it seems so hard. It would be so much easier just to say yes to these things and then be like miserable later when I had to do them or be ill because they're more than I could do or
right.
do them poorly or whatever. But like for the sake of what am I doing this uncomfortable thing and having a remembering your purpose? Like I want to feel this or I want to
Right.
not end up in this situation again.
Right. Right. Whoever said that dismantling systems of oppression would be easy?
Really?
Yeah. I think we all want it, right? We're like, give me the pill, like, right? Easy. I'll just take it, solve the equation. But I think it requires a lot of wisdom to know that growth comes in the discomfort.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking yesterday about how a lot of times when people receive feedback
Hmm.
about something from someone, what they want is just like, just give me the rule. Just tell me what I shouldn't do again. But the real work of feedback is what did I feel like before I did the thing that landed on you wrong?
Hmm.
Like, what was going on? What was actually motivating me? Like, like if something was really off, and that is such a harder inquiry and so much more vulnerable. But when we just are trying to be like, fine, Nicole, just tell me what to not say next time, instead of
Yeah.
like, really what was going on for me when I stormed into the house and said this or that to you, or, just all the things that people do to each other, especially in intimate relationships. Like being willing to be like, oh, I was in a moment of grandiosity, or I was actually in a moment, I really wanted you to think I was cool in this way, or I really wanted to sabotage our relationship, and some of it is unknowable because a lot of our lives are unconscious to ourselves, but even being like curious.
Yeah.
Like I think most people are not doing that kind of accountability on most things. And
Hmm.
it's like so hard to do.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why that muscle of curiosity, I feel like, is the biggest step is like, where am
Mhm.
I coming from? Why? And asking those questions before we respond, right? Before we do that thing, before you send the text, before you post that thing, right? If you could do that sort of work, and then the difficult part is, of course, that it changes over time. The why of why you did that thing at that moment will be different in 5 days, 5 years when you look back on it, because we keep just making more narrative and story and meaning making, and we're like, I didn't realize at the time, but it was also this. So there's definitely not going to be that point where you've hit like peak level of insight to be able to know why you did that thing or this thing or that. As much as I wish, again, prepping for this conversation, I was like, Dean, give me the answers between
But
community
we can
care.
stop doing things. We do. I think it's
Yeah.
like some things, not everything, but it's like I think about the way some of the choices I made about my sexual life in my 20s and what kind of investigation I did to be like, how did I get myself into this weird
Yeah.
tangle and whatever. And like I don't do some of those things anymore and like haven't done them for a long time or like I can receive feedback from I always the example I always think about is my boyfriend who's like stuff I always wanted to move in the house or
Yeah.
living together and I'm like, oh, I move his stuff. I'm like, oh, someone's coming over. I want it to be clean on the table. It's like it was a lot of fits and starts to learn to stop moving his stuff. but I think I like, it was years of practice
Yeah,
to be
right,
like, what's going on in me? Shame about the mess, some idea about how I'll be judged by this friend that's really based in nothing because this friend loves me and doesn't care if there's, someone's stuff is on the table. But like,
right.
just like this is landing on someone else in a way that I have a justification for it in my mind, but it's not acceptable. This is not doesn't feel good to someone who lives here, And just like I just think we can, if we practice non-defensiveness as much as possible, and we keep giving the feedback. Also, like he had to keep giving me the feedback. It was not going to be an easy one, you know.
Yeah,
He had to take that risk. I take the risk of hearing it. Eventually it could be funny, but years,
yeah,
took years, and that's
yeah,
harder when it's stuff like my relationship to your substance use, or that your dishonesty, or your compulsive relationship to spending money, or wow, all the zillions of things we're all doing that are hard for people in our lives.
yeah. I hear you speaking to the hope and optimism for change, to not lose sight and that to know that change is possible.
Yes. I think it can be good to remind ourselves we have already changed a lot of times. I feel like a lot
Yeah,
of people I know are just like ashamed to still be dealing with whatever behavior they wish they weren't doing, or oh, I can't believe I'm dating someone like this again, or can't believe I fucked up
yeah,
this work thing again, and I'm procrastinating, or whatever they're blaming themselves for. And just like, you've changed before. It's not impossible. And also it's okay to like keep running into our wounds. There are wounds. Like
right.
this is the hand you were dealt. It's gonna come up again.
Right, right. Absolutely. I really appreciate that invitation to hope in this process and the calling it closer to know the reality that we'll be doing that for a lifetime. And so you got to find the pleasure, the joy in that process of growing, messing up, and getting back up again, right? Because we'll die one day still being like, huh, there was more to that. And if you constantly spend your life like grinding at yourself so hard, you'll miss out on all the joy, right? So it's that like deep dance between the yes and of so much more to learn, and also I've learned in so many ways, and there's still more, and I'm still messing up, but I'm also have learned so many things. And again, that's like the emotional maturity to hold conflicting emotions and feelings at the same time.
And believing that other people can change. I mean, this is
Yeah,
really big. Like, as if I'm just like, oh, I was in a group with Nicole and she dropped the ball on this project, or she said this thing I didn't like that made me think she's got the wrong politics, or and then I'm just like freeze frame you for life. Like,
yeah,
I have to believe, also, I have to believe people can change to be willing to take the risk of giving feedback.
yep.
And a lot of us are not taking that risk of giving feedback. So then the change is not happening. So it's like,
Hmm.
I need to believe in my capacity to change so that I can believe in yours.
Exactly, exactly. Well, Dean, it's clear that I could talk to you for hours on these subjects. It's such a joy to have you on the podcast, and I love everywhere that we've really touched into, and it feels like hitting on so much of the nuance of human relating.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you so much for the
Yeah.
conversation. It's really fun to talk to someone who's doing what you're doing. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Same, same. Well, Dean, as we're coming towards the end of our time, I'm going to take another deep breath with you. And I'll check in and see if there's anything else that you want to share with the listeners. Otherwise, I have a closing question for you.
Well, I would be in so much trouble with my collaborators if I didn't say that I really hope people will try out our podcast, Love and
Yeah.
Fucked Up World, the podcast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll have it linked in the show notes below, so it'll be easy for listeners. You can just go straight into there and check it out right there. All right,
Thank you.
Dean. Well, the question that I ask everyone on the show is, what is one thing that you wish other people knew was more normal?
I love this question. Shame. I think most people don't know how much shame they're experiencing. I think it's motivating almost everything. And people are like, I don't have shame. And I wish people knew that everyone is experiencing a lot of shame and that we
Yeah.
could work with it, like name it. Oh, shame is telling me this about what other people think about me, this about what's not okay with me. I think that so much of the work is shame work. And then
Yeah.
having grief about the conditions that produced that much shame in all of us.
Right. Absolutely. It gets in the way of our ability to connect. And it's been such a joy to start bringing some of the early guests on the show back to the podcast and hear how they answer that question. Right. So you've answered that question in the past.
I wonder what I said last time. I have no idea.
You want to
I'm
know what
kind
you
of,
said? Because I
yeah.
did this
Do
time.
you
I
know?
did. The last people I hadn't checked, but I was like, okay, for Dean, I'm going to go back and I'm going to start doing this for all the people. So last time when I asked you this question, you said one word, and it was shame.
God, I don't change at all. Well, I am like total shame loser. That is so funny. Wow, that's so funny because it feels like a complete question to me.
Yeah, five
Well,
years
all
later,
right,
shame.
consistency.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Good to know. Hmm.
Yeah, with that connection to the word shame for you. Do you want to speak to that? I mean, that's clearly a defining
I mean, I've
thread.
just done so much work on this and it's been so helpful to me. Yeah, it's just like most of my constricted reactions are coming from a fundamental idea that and also a lot of control stuff towards
Yeah.
myself or others or outcomes of groups or outcomes of relationships. It's based in some idea that I am responsible for everything, and
Mm-hmm.
that I've anything that's going wrong was me. And it
Mm,
can relate to also being an internalizer. Like if we have a conflict,
yeah.
I'm like, oh, what can I'll do it all. I'll fix it all on my own, and it's all my fault.
Mm.
And that's not a great habit because there's a lot of people out there who are externalizers, and it's really hard when you're in a relationship with one person taking
Yeah.
all the blame and the other one also giving it. That can be a hard one. Um,
Yes, it is.
yeah, or being in a dysfunctional situation and thinking I can just fix it all myself,
Yeah.
or thinking that if anything, yeah, taking people's ungrounded criticism in too deeply, taking responsibility for whole groups' difficulties instead of realizing the right-sized amount that any one person can be part of anything. These are all patterns that I've worked with for years. These things have really prompted overwork,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mm,
or prompted, yeah, just like other, but I just think they're really common.
mm,
I just feel like
mm-hmm.
it's like I spend so much time talking in groups about the emotional processes happening in our organizing and in people's relationships. And it's like shame is behind so much of it. And a lot of people haven't even identified that they have shame.
Right.
It sounds so bad or something. It's like, oh, I'm not ashamed of myself. It's like we live in a culture where you're supposed to pretend you like love yourself and have great self-esteem. I don't even know
Right.
what that means to most people. I feel like it's so fake
Yeah.
and it doesn't feel like anything. And so it feels like if you were to admit that you had shame, it would be that you were like really bad and dysfunctional. It's like there's shame about shame, you
Yeah.
know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and people do a lot of like overriding, I think, and pretending forms of grandiosity can actually be a reaction to shame.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to
Yeah.
pretend I know everything about politics and
Exactly.
everyone else is not smart enough
Exactly.
when actually I'm terrified I'm going to be exposed as not knowing something. It just produces a lot of aggressive behavior. It produces a lot of um, self-blame, disconnection, like you said. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's just been a real key. Like being able to see when that's what's happening
Mm-hmm.
has often led me like to have a new approach or a new way to think or feel or.
Yeah. And I'm sure community spaces where that part of yourself can come forward and you're not kicked out of the group to name it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously being a trans person and a queer person and like a sexual person, like it's vital to, you know, look into the ways we might feel like we shouldn't be ourselves or exist. And like it's so delightful to clear some of that up. I mean, it's like what a amazing source of aliveness. I'm so much happier at 48 than I
Mm.
was at 28. Like
So, what would you say to your 28-year-old self then with the wisdom that you have where you're at right now? If you could speak to him and
I
that
mean, I
younger
just wrote this
self.
entire book for that
Yeah, yeah,
person.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, I'm
Read the
like, here's
book.
everything you have to figure. But I don't. I also don't know. It's hard to tell what people
Yeah.
can know when they're not ready to know
Oh,
it.
right,
I
exactly.
hope. I also have my own questions. Like, does reading self-help books help at all? I've done it obsessively since I was, a teenager,
Yeah.
because ultimately some stuff is, it's embodied learning. Maybe it helps you look out for things to try or models, but also some stuff you just have to experience your way
Yeah.
through.
Yeah.
I would probably tell this person, it's not as bad as you think. You're not as bad as you think.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Letting that one really truly like sink into your body. I can feel it in mine of just like,
Yeah, this is the whole thing. I think our culture is like you're fantastic, you're wonderful. These are not things that a ashamed being inside or small parts can hear. You can
Right.
hear like, you're not the best, you're not the worst. That's like one of my favorite phrases from the 12-step programs, or
Mm,
like, you know, this is how it is now. I use that phrase a lot. It's an equanimity phrase in Buddhism. It's like, this is how it is.
yeah.
It's like this right now.
Yeah.
It's not like not trying to force it to be something it's not trying to repress the feeling. This is how it is now. It's,
Hmm.
or you're acceptable, not like you're fantastic,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
then the
Yeah.
system just fights back against those kind of
Right.
statements.
Defenses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
doubles down.
Exactly. Exactly. Ah, Dean, well, it was such a joy to have you on the show today again. And I really hope you can feel how the vulnerability of your shares, whether it's from your early childhood dynamics, all the wisdom that you have in community, I hope you can feel how all of that will help us dismantle the shame, right? Because when we hear other people who have gone through it, who struggle to hear some of those words of validation, and it's easier to go into the acceptance of you're not that good, you're not that bad either, right? Like hearing you say that with your voice, it's what allows all of us to know, wow, I'm not the only person who has struggled with the things that Dean has struggled with or that Nicole has struggled with. And it provides that connection that I think really strips away the shame. Shame comes so much from that feeling that we're the only one who ever has this weird, strange human experience that no one else experiences, right? And so the more that you can bring yourself into these conversations and be authentic, be vulnerable about all the mess, the mistakes, the ways that you're learning in your partnerships, all that, like that is how we're going to really strip away some of that shame so we can come together to end these systems and at least put one serious dent in them during our lifetime. So I really hope you can like feel the power of the work that you're doing.
Thank you. May everything we've done together in this meeting be of service to our community's liberation.
Yeah, absolutely. May it be so. Well, Dean, where can people find your book? What's the best place to go find your book and all of your resources?
We're actually selling it right now on my website to try to raise money for the podcast,
Great.
deanspade.net. And there's a lot of other resources there. And the podcast is just wherever podcasts are. And yeah, we know we put all that stuff on social media, trying to make it easy to find.
Yeah, great. Well, dear listener, I'll have all of those links in the show notes below so you can go straight to there and find all of Dean's content. And again, thank you, Dean, for coming on the show today. Dear listener, thank you so much for tuning in to Modern Anarchy. Thank you for sharing this episode with your friends, with your lovers, with your community. Truly, it means so much to me, and I am so grateful that you are here. If you are wanting to release jealousy in your non-monogamous dynamics and step into compersion and pleasure-filled connection, you can read my book, The Psychedelic Jealousy Guide, for free on my website. There you will also find so many other free resources, including worksheets on how to clearly communicate and set commitments and boundaries within your non-monogamous dynamics, and other ways to practice clear communication about your sexual desires so that you can step into your most pleasure-filled sex and relationships. So head on over to modernanarchypodcast.com to find all of those free resources. And I look forward to seeing you next week.